Let's talk money right now, though. Our personal finance expert, Mary Holm, is with us. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Jesse.
If you've got a question about money, chances are we've discussed it in this slot, and you can find our previous interviews via podcast on the RNZ podcast page. And you've got a really interesting one for us this week. What's the topic?
Yeah, before I get into it, though, you were commenting about the panpipes in that.
Yeah.
And that song straight away reminded me of Men at Work, The Land Down Under.
Yeah.
It must have panpipes in it. I think the music, the tune was even very similar.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They got in trouble for that Land Down Under one.
Did they?
Yeah, because the tune to that the panpipes are doing, or whatever, the flute or whatever it is a traditional Aboriginal song.
Oh.
Kookaburra sits on the old gum tree.
Yes.
So there was a massive settlement because someone still owned the rights.
Really?
Yeah.
My
I think I've got
goodness.
most of those facts right. And the court case ended up being pretty traumatizing for a lot of people, and they ended up owing a lot of money. So.
How interesting.
Yeah, it was a big one.
I had a bit of fun with that. I was working on the Chicago Tribune when that song came out, and all the Americans were asking me, what's Vegemite? So I took some Vegemite into work, and most of them wouldn't even have the courage. I took some crackers and,
good for you.
And quite a few of them said, I don't like the look of that. They wouldn't even try it.
Yeah, there's a whole YouTube series on Americans trying Vegemite for the first
time.
time.
Is there?
Good stuff. Yeah. So you were the original meme back in the day, Mary.
Yes.
Yeah, so tell us about this week.
Yeah, well, back in, I think it was March, there was International Women's Day, and so you and I talked about how women invest and the things they do right and the things they don't do so well. And I said to you at the time, look, we'd better do one for men as well, or we'll be accused of bias. And so I looked up International Men's Day is November the 19th. So I thought, well, better get in now and talk about how men invest.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good stuff about the way men. Before we even get into this is terribly stereotyped, and there are many women and men who don't do it the way the research shows. But there's a lot of interesting research that shows there's real strong tendencies for men to invest one way and women to invest another. The really good part about the way men invest is that they're more open to taking risk than women, and in the long run, that as long as you do it with diversification and with some wisdom, you're going to end up with more money. And interestingly, just this week, the Morningstar, which does a quarterly report on KiwiSaver funds, came out and showed that for the year ending September 30th, every KiwiSaver fund except 4 tiny little ones had a gain in the year, and the average gains for the lowest risk one, the average gain was about 12%, and for the highest risk it was 22%.
That's incredible.
It's incredible, yes. This is for the year ending September.
Yeah.
Normally over longer periods it's much lower than that.
Yeah.
The average for over 10 years, the average for the lowest risk defensive funds is 4.3%, and then it ranges on up to the highest risk ones is 9.1% over the last 10 years. But it's interesting too the way it just keeps on happening, that the lower risk ones have lower returns than the higher risk ones. Not every time. There was a time a couple of years ago where that wasn't going on. Every now and then the higher risk ones do badly and sometimes have losses. But certainly over more than a year or two, nearly always you'll get more if you take more risk, go into the higher risk funds or whatever. And men are much better at doing that than women. Women are too conservative in it. Men are also more likely to read the KiwiSaver annual statement. That was some research by the FMA, and that's good. Having a look at every year when the KiwiSaver sends you a statement of how well you've done over the last year, it's a good idea to have a look at that and check whether you're on track and all of that, and men tend to be better than that. But another interesting thing in the research is that young men and women, there was some research on financial knowledge, and young men and women have got a similar level of knowledge, but as people get older, there's more of a divergence, and men seem to learn more as they get older, and women don't learn more, no, not to the same degree. And so by the time you get to retired people, men tend to have quite a lot more financial knowledge than women.
Yeah, what's the theory behind that, do you think?
Goodness knows, really. I mean, I just saw the data on it. I mean, obviously the retired people are the boomers, and whether I'm a boomer and whether we were discouraged from taking an interest in money, the women, I don't know. You just got to wonder, but
Or maybe you get into a relationship and you know how you sort of divvy up jobs in a relationship. Maybe the man is more likely to take on the idea of money decisions, although I don't even think that's true, because I think oftentimes women are running finances of the household.
Some of the research has said women are more likely to be running the day by day and the grocery bills and
making ends meet sort of thing.
Yes, and men are more likely to be taking an interest in where everybody's KiwiSaver invested and perhaps
so that would probably in the course of that, if you were tending to do that, you'd learn along the way, wouldn't you?
Yes. Yes. Whereas the lessons you learn from trying to make the budget stretch to buying the food this week, you know, they're pretty obvious lessons. They're not. Anyway, the big negative about the way men invest is that they tend to be overconfident. They're less inclined to get advice and be patient when things don't go so well. So in the global financial crisis and in the COVID downturn, a lot more men than women rushed in and moved to lower risk KiwiSaver and other funds when the value of their account went down. And that's the absolute wrong thing to do. They were selling when the price was low. It's just like you're selling a car or something like that. You don't want to sell it when the price is low.
Yeah,
you know, that's that's
and there's a lot of ways of saying this, but so selling low, and then if you're trying to time things like that, you wait till you see the market go up, and then you go, oh, this looks good, and you buy, and suddenly you're buying when the price is high.
Yes. Oh, exactly. And that's what. Men are much more likely to be doing that. They're more competitive and they see money as a way to keep score. That was one of the pieces of research came up with that. And there would
be some advantages to that as well, probably.
Yes, indeed.
More engaged, possibly more.
But the trouble is, quite a lot of the engagement is involved in trying to time markets, and that is not a good thing to do. It's actually better to get yourself into for example, in KiwiSaver, get yourself into the right risk fund, and then just stay there and don't look at it very often at all, except for just perhaps the annual statement.
For example, if you were trying to time the share market over the last few years, it would have been just about impossible, I reckon, because they've been talking about how frothy it is, or it being in a bubble, or how, it's been going up for so many years, it must be due to go down. They've been saying that for, 5 years now?
Well, yes, probably.
If you ignore COVID,
Yeah, the COVID, of course, made the market suddenly plunge and then suddenly soar.
Yeah. So lots of messages that that we've had this great run of luck and you're better to take your money and get out. But if you'd done that, you would have lost the last 12 months' gains, which is probably some of the biggest gains of all.
That's right. And I was just reading the other day, the American markets are going up for the second year in a row, going up a lot.
Yeah.
And that's quite unusual to have huge, big gains in both years. And so some people are going to look at that and say, oh, gosh, I better get out because it might go. And it might, but it might not. So there was one piece of research on trading frequency, which divided investors up into 5 groups depending on how often they traded. And the ones with the lowest trading rate got 7 percentage points more than the ones with the highest trading rate. So the numbers were something like 3% versus 10%. 10% for the ones who didn't trade very often versus 3% for the ones who did.
So that would favour women. That would say if women are more likely to trade less, then they are likely to have 7 percentage point advantage over the men. However, we've got that earlier trend you told us about, that men take more risks, including more of the good type of risks, and so that might balance, if not even outweigh.
Indeed. And I mean, men do have more in their KiwiSaver than women at retirement, and there's all kinds of reasons for that, which I think we've discussed before, including just making more money and not taking time out from the workforce. But there is also the fact that men tend to take more risks, and therefore their funds are going to be growing faster. But I wanted to tell you about a piece of research that Charles Schwab did, which is a big American financial services firm. This is fairly recent stuff, and it was on what to do with a lump sum. And this question comes up in my Herald column a lot. People get an inheritance, or they suddenly get access to their KiwiSaver money, or they sell a property and buy a cheaper, smaller one, or whatever, trying to decide what to do with their money. And so Charles Schwab people did some research on this, and they looked at 5 different theoretical investors. They gave them all $2,000 at the start of every year for 20 years and said, invest it as and when you want to do that. And one of them was Peter Perfect, who had perfect market timing. So he always put his money into the market at the very lowest price of the whole year. And by contrast, you had Rosie Rotten, who put her money in at the market's peak every year. So she had terrible market timing, and Peter had perfect market timing. But then they also had Ashley Action, who put in money on the first trading day of the year. So she just got in straight away, she or he got in straight away. And Matthew Monthly, who divided the money up into 12 equal portions and put it in on a regular basis at the beginning of every month. And then finally there was Larry Linger, who couldn't decide what to do, and so he just put his money in, left it in the bank thinking about it, and never did get round to investing it. And what they found was, as you would totally predict, that the person with the perfect market timing, who always bought at the absolute bottom price for the year, did the best of all. But and he would have ended up with 138,000. But the one who came second was the one who invested on the first trading day of the year, and she ended up with 128,000, so not that much less. She just got money in straight away. She said, I'm not going to muck around, I'm going to put this money in. He got 138 and she had 128. And so she's a more realistic one. Peter Perfect, it doesn't exist in the real world. But interestingly enough, the one who put his money in 12 equal lots through the year did almost as well. He got 124,000. And meanwhile, the one with terrible timing got 112,000. And the guy Larry Linger, who left his money in the bank, ended up with only 44. So I realised it's a bit hard for people to follow all that money. So the one with the perfect timing had 138, which is impossible. The perfect timing is impossible. And the bad timing one had 112. So they average out at, whatever that is. Jessie, you're good at maths. But they didn't do as well as the one who went on the first trading day, or the one who divided it into 12 equal lots. And when I get asked this, the theoretical answer is you should just put the money in straight away, because the chances are it'll make more in the stock market than it will in the bank in the meantime. It might not for those particular months, but the chances are it will.
More often than not.
That's your best bet. But what in real life people often have a lot of trouble putting all their money in one lump sum at the beginning. If they've got a big sum like that, they think, oh gosh, the markets might go down next week and I'll be really regretting it. And so a much more realistic thing for real people out there is to divide it up into pieces. I often say three lots, and put a third in now, a third in a month, and a third in 2 months, or something like that. So you're spacing it out, and that means it's a lot easier to do psychologically, because if you happen to get the timing wrong, you say, oh, and then the market goes down the next day. You say, oh well, I've only put a third or a quarter in. It's sort of psychologically easier to do, and so people tend to just get on with it and do that. And so that's the realistic answer here. And But the other message is that the people who were trying to time the market didn't do on average as well as those who just either got their money in straight away or put it in equal lots.
So let me say something to you, because I think
Yes.
at first glance, it looks like Matthew Monthly is following Mary Holm's advice, right?
Yes.
Instead of putting it all in one lump sum, you spread it over the year,
Yes.
means you ride the ups and downs of the year. However, this is an interesting experiment because he's done that every year for 20 years, and you're more likely to say that about a one-off lump sum. Means because you could get really unlucky if you put it in first day of the trading year, and so you're saying you ride that luck out a wee bit, and you put it in 3 or 4 lump sums. This is slightly different, though. This is if you're investing a large amount every year.
Yes.
In which case, over time, you would expect by going in the first day of the market for the year, you would naturally ride out the bumps and troughs, so you get the same result.
Yes, that's a really good point. Yeah, because when you look over 20 years, he's divided it up.
So some years it would go well, some years it wouldn't. So
Yes.
you're really spreading your money in the same way as you suggest.
Yes.
Defending your reputation.
But over the years, that is a good point. It's and the fact that he did so well, Ashley, what's Ashley? It's either, isn't it?
The idea.
Yeah. The fact that person...
Ashley Bloomfield or Ashley Madison, yeah.
Yeah, very good. You're always quick, Tessie. Yeah. The fact that person did really well really reflects the fact that over time the markets are going up.
Yeah.
That, the long-term trend is upwards, and so arguably always getting your money in the beginning of every year, on average, that's going to work in your favour.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good stuff. Very interesting experiment.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Yeah, the message might be a bit unclear. The main message I want to make is that people who try to time markets often get it wrong. And that men tend to do that more than women. But regardless of your gender, it's not a clever idea to try and work out when you should put the money in and when you shouldn't. And people get it wrong way more often than they get it right.
So there you go, men. This year for International Men's Day, how about taking some advice, tempering your perhaps natural inclination to try and time the markets, and have another listen to this podcast to make sure you're doing the right thing with your money.
Thanks,
Mary.
Jesse.
Good to see you.
You too.
Mary Holmes, our personal finance expert.